Hello everyone, this is Randy Lober here to tell you about my Creating Innovative Uses of Technology project. Um, let's go ahead and get started. The title of my project is Using Google Drive and Text Help Study Skills Add-on to Promote Proficiency in Answering Free Response Questions. And let's look at some at the rationale. Um, I'll be teaching my school's first ever advanced placement course, and that course will be Human Geography this fall, or this school year rather. And part of the exam at the end of the course, the exam is divided into two parts: multiple choice and free response, and each of those is weighted equally in the student's score. Now, being that it's our school's first ever AP course, it stands to reason that our students likely aren't well prepared to write at with the level of proficiency necessary for college writing, and so this unit and these two assignments are geared toward helping them to improve that proficiency. Um, so we'll be using an app called Text Help Study Skills Add-on, which adds on to the Google Drive suite of applications, and we'll be doing a few things. We'll be looking at the success criteria that are outlined in free response questions. They'll also highlight portions of the free response questions that address those criteria in anchor papers. And the second lesson will actually see them self-evaluate some of their work in response to a different free response question. So I've given you the brief description of the first lesson here. Students again are looking at actual free response questions from previous tests. And they'll also be looking at anchor papers or sample answers of varying quality. I will provide them a highlighted and color-coded free response question as is illustrated here. That highlights the success criteria and some of the key descriptors and verbs that students need to perform in creating answers. Students are then going to score each sample response, color-coding the parts of the answer that match each success criteria, and by doing so they'll evaluate whether or not what makes a good answer or a bad answer. Some of the technology involved here, obviously this will work best in a one-to-one setting, computer lab, laptops, tablets, or other things. I don't recommend mobile devices because Google Docs has limited functionality on mobile devices, so that's out for this lesson. Obviously, of course, students will need to get to the internet, be able to access Google Docs, and we'll also need to add the Text Help Study Skills add-on to their Google Drive, and that might be something that is they require help with if they haven't done that before. Teachers also need to locate free response questions. In my case, the College Board website is a great resource for that. It shows a bunch of previous year's exam questions, and I've taken these two to use in this unit here. So the skills necessary for teachers: firstly, obviously teachers should be familiar with using Google Drive and sharing assignments with their students. They should also be familiar with using add-ons and adding them to the software. Teachers should also be familiar with the methodology behind using anchor papers in letting students reflect and refine their own writing. Students, on the other hand, with task 4 here, need to have much the same background information that teachers do. Obviously, knowing how to use Google Drive, have a Google account, add add-ons, and things like that. The teacher might need to spend some extra time prior to the lesson helping students add the add-on to their Drive suite, as well as sharing documents if students aren't familiar with that. And it might take some time for the teacher to instruct teachers in using the add-on itself. So we've touched on this before, what our students have to do in lesson 1. Again, they are viewing a teacher-created doc that looks like this, or rather looks like this. Within this doc, they'll copy one to their own folder to share for evaluation purposes later. They will view the question along with the success criteria that have been highlighted, and in a fully divided up lesson, they would have anchor papers down here and highlight using the different parts of the add-on, um, parts of the answer choices that correspond to the success criteria outlined here. That gives them a good idea to see whether or not the student answered the question and determine whether or not the answer is, of course, a high quality, low quality, or middle quality answer. So the procedures that this teacher should follow are these. I would caution you that free response questions are intended as summative assessments, so they're usually given at the end of a unit. So these two assumptions are made. Teachers completed teaching, and students, teacher and students have already procured access to Google Drive. With those assumptions in mind, there's a few things that students need to do. Or teachers and students need to do. Firstly, the teacher needs to instruct the students in adding the text help add-on in case they haven't already. Excuse me just one moment. We're having some technical difficulties here. And we're back. Alright. So other things the teacher needs to do are prepare a document, as I have here, containing the free response question that's already annotated, and share them with those students. Students should copy their own document to their personal drive in order to allow for evaluation. After reviewing success criteria with the teacher, students should read each answer, highlight portions relevant to each criterion, and highlights should be color-coded by the criterion as shown in the document here. Students will share their annotated documents with the teacher, and then the instructor may solicit feedback, showcase responses, or a generic answer key in order to provide closure to the lesson. So some of the obvious advantages here are that students have practice with actual free response questions that they'll see on the exam or other students have seen on the exam. They'll also be able to identify high quality and low quality answers, hopefully getting a better idea of what their writing needs to look like. And again, because there's the focus on success criteria, it's hoped that students will translate that experience to their actual writing. Disadvantages is, of course, the teacher may need to take time to help students in figuring out how to use the technology. And again, the lesson might backfire if for some reason students haven't meshed the content beforehand. Otherwise, they might not generate quality answers that do mesh the criteria. So again, I would strongly encourage a strategy like this to be used as a summative assessment, or at least after the bulk of material has been taught. Of course, the strategy relies on anchor papers as an instructional tool. Students are exposed to answers of varying quality and are asked to evaluate them. So again, they're getting practice with the assessment to kind of eliminate that test anxiety. And I would say that something like this could be transferred to multiple other settings. I mentioned the example here of an English instructor using a strategy to highlight excellent examples of composition, or a science teacher might use it to highlight lab reports. There's several applications of that are possible here. In Lesson 2, students are using some of the same technology, Text Help and Google Drive as their tools. Again, the teacher will distribute a free response question. Students are then responsible for identifying and annotating success criteria on their own. Then they'll compose a prompt and annotate their responses in similar to the manner they did with the anchor papers to prove that they have incorporated or addressed all the success criteria in their response. So again, we're seeing the same technology and resources. No need to rehash that. The same skills and knowledge are required of the students and the teacher here. So let's skip down to what students are asked to do. So using Google Drive, the teacher distributes a new document containing a different yet related free response question. Obviously, it would help if the question is related to the same unit. Students make a copy of the document in order to submit their own work at the conclusion of the lesson. In their document, students use the add-on as shown here to highlight the success criteria outlined in the question. They'll construct a response to the question, making use of text help to highlight portions of their answer that correspond to each criterion. And students will then share their completed annotated work with the instructor. So the procedures, again, are similar to what we've done before. Teacher creates a document, shares it with students. Students view the document, copy it to their own drive to complete the work. While viewing the document, students use the add-on to highlight and color code success criteria outlined in the question. So what we will be giving them is a question that has not been highlighted. It will be their job to highlight the action verbs such as describe and the quantity of what the question is asking for. One example, two examples, so on and so forth. Once they have done that, they'll create a response. After they've written their response, they will highlight and color code portions of response that correspond to each criteria. Then they'll share their work with the instructor for evaluation. The instructor at this point might choose to give individual feedback to each one that has been shared with him or her. Or the instructor may choose to use these as anchor papers to show varying levels of quality to help students reflect on this. So again, there are specific advantages as mentioned before. Again, students get a real feel for what the free response questions on the exam might look like. And exposure to those questions can help reduce test anxiety, thereby increasing performance. Some disadvantages from the unit as a whole I looked at here in lesson 2. One major disadvantage is it does take 2 days of instructional time, and to people who have or even haven't taught taught AP Human Geography before, the course is very dense with material, so 2 days might seem like a lot to give up as instructional time. But however, I think that focusing on the free response questions early in the course pays dividends later, as you'll need to spend less time helping students develop those skills prior to them taking the test. So again, students are involved as far as instructional strategy. Students are involved in identifying success criteria, which has clear expectations and leaves little room for ambiguity. It also allows for some self-evaluation for students to see how their work measures up against what a scorer might expect. And it also, again, simulates the testing environment, again giving students better chance to succeed on the actual exam come May. So there are some, like the first lesson, this lesson can obviously be transferred to different settings. While the content I've mentioned here in these questions is pretty subject specific, the methodology can be changed. An English student might be asked to highlight their use of metaphors or a different skill through a narrative they've created. A science student might look at different parts of the scientific method they've used on establishing a lab report. Again, the possibilities are endless here. I could also see this add-on, Text Help Study Skills, be adapted down to elementary grades, perhaps as students identify the main ideas and supporting details within paragraphs that either they are reading or they themselves have written in order to make sure they have mastered those concepts. So I think there's a wide variety of applications for Text Help Study Skills and Google Drive being used together here. Thank you for paying attention today, and that is my lesson. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation.